Hey guys, Trevor here from SpineWise, and today I want to talk to you about why it is really important to outrun your stress. So if you're suffering with memory problems, especially short-term memory, you walk into rooms and you don't really remember why you walked in there, you can't remember where you left your car keys, you have to write down things so you remember what they were, then you may actually be having issues with what I'm about to talk about today. Let alone if you know that you're someone who constantly is under a lot of stress or have been under for a long period of time, then this may also appeal to you as well. So before we start getting into it, before I can actually explain to you why you need to outrun your stress, there's a few key things you need to understand about the brain and about stress. And the most important one is this little fella here called your hippocampus, which kind of sits through this bottom area down here in the brain itself. And the reason it's called a hippocampus is because if we take the extension from this and we come all the way around what we call our limbic system, kind of looks a little bit about like a hippocampus, like a seahorse, and that's where it gets its name from. But despite its small size, it's actually one of the most important areas of the brain when it comes to dealing with stress. Now, let me explain to you why. So let's say we are in the jungle, we've gone for a walk, we stumbled across a lion and this lion comes out and tears at us and starts roaring its head off. We need to be able to get away from there really, really quickly. So what happens is all our senses send information into our hypothalamus. Our hypothalamus determines, hey, this is a potential threat to our life, we need to protect ourselves. It sends messages throughout our flight or fight system, but also down to our pituitary gland. From that, it sends messages down to our adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands release two hormones, one called adrenaline. The key one I want to talk to you about today is another one called cortisol. Sorry, our little screen is going a bit haywire there at the moment. But the other one is one called cortisol. And what cortisol does is it enhances the flight or fight response. So the flight or fight response that normally occurs, it kind of winds it up and makes it even bigger, meaning that you're more likely to survive the attack. So how does it actually work? So let's put it this way. If we were to be attacked right now, the flight or fight sensors come up, cortisol comes up, this highlights the system, winds it all up, and it also comes up and hits an area on the outside of your brain, the temple lobe of your brain, called your hippocampus. And that's the structure we're talking about just in here. And what the hippocampus then does is, as I said before, the hippocampus is all about your navigation skills, your spatial awareness, and also your memory, short-term to long-term memory conversion, and also your visual memory. So when this area gets stimulated, what it does is it livens all those up so that if you need to get out of there, then what ends up happening is you have really good navigation skills, you can get through things without bumping into things really quickly, and you'll have a memory of where you just were so that you never come back to it. So what's the side effect of doing that though? Well, the side effect is really simple, and that is when you stimulate the hippocampus, if you do it recurrently time and time again, it actually starts to shrink. And as it shrinks, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and its functions get less and less and less. And this is just neural die-off from overstimulation of the area, which means you start having issues with your short-term memory, your navigation skills, your spatial awareness, the ability to read maps, the ability to find out where you are when you're in a shopping center. All this orientation, all this stuff is derived from this. And as it starts to shrink, we start getting problems with it. So how does that normally not happen under stressful environments? So normally what happens is our hypothalamus signals our pituitary signals our adrenals, cortisol is released, hits the hippocampus, livens it up, stimulates it. That stimulation sends a message back across to the hypothalamus and says, hey, message has been received, turn off the stress response. And this is our standard feedback system to switch stress off. The problem that happens is as this area starts to shrink, the result is that you start losing this ability to turn off the hypothalamus. There are a couple of other little ways that it can occur, but the primary one starts getting lost, and therefore we become more likely to stay in a stress state long term. So how do we actually avoid this from happening? So let's go back to our situation with our lion. Our lion's come into us, they come to attack us, we've gotten our stress response off, our hippocampus is livened up, we start running, and guess what happens when we start running? There's another really, really important substance known as BDNF. This is called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And BDNF has an amazing function. BDNF is stimulates neural growth. So what it does, and it's the highest place that we see in the brain on a regular basis, is in the hippocampus. So as you start running and you start moving, especially if you're doing endurance type work at a lower heart rate, we tend to elevate BDNF, and the elevation of BDNF repairs the hippocampus. It gets it back on track, it improves function, increases dendritic growth, and starts stimulating the healing or the recovery process within that area. So this has been, you can use this to your advantage as well. This was, whilst the neurology wasn't known back then, if you look up the Naperville OWL program, this is something that was done through Naperville, which is a school in New York, I believe, where what they basically did, they started instigating exercise as part of every child's morning routine. So it became compulsory from 7:30 to 8 o'clock for everyone to do half an hour of exercise. By doing that, what they were really doing was elevating this BDNF. And like we said before, hippocampus, short-term memory to long-term memory conversion. So as they started stimulating the exercise, as they started elevating BDNF, the net result of the elevation of BDNF was improved hippocampal function for about 3 to 4 hours afterwards, and the result of that was improved memory. And the school actually came from being below the average in the US to being one of the top schools in the world within a few years, just by instigating exercise and making it compulsory in the school in the morning. So this is a big thing. Historically speaking, you're attacked by a lion, stress released, hippocampus livened up, run away from the lion, hippocampus healed. The problem we have with most stresses we incur nowadays is that we don't run from our stresses. They're perceived stresses. They're, hey, this could happen in this situation. And the result of that is we don't get the BDNF elevation. This is why it's so critical to make sure you're running from your stress. We need to be exercising on a regular basis to reduce stress, to stimulate this fella hippocampus, to improve recovery, and to help control our stress responses heading forward. Anyway guys, I've tried to very simply summarize some complicated neurology for you there and make you understand just how important exercise is in terms of regulating stress. If you have any questions or you want to know more, post up or send me a message. Always happy to help in any way, shape or can. Otherwise, we'll catch up with you next vid. Bye for now.